Hi everyone, welcome to the channel DevOps Tech Stack. So in this video, I will talk about the DevOps roadmap which you need to follow for 2025-26. So here, I will be providing you a step-by-step guide to not just learning the DevOps tools, but actually understanding how they work together in the real world projects. So I get a lot of questions like how do I start with DevOps? How can I learn it practically instead of just reading about it? And where do these tools fit in the big picture? So today I will try to break it down as much as possible. I am just giving one scenario where Alex wants to change his profile to the DevOps engineer and he is confused what strategy he need to follow to learn the about in the DevOps, right? So to get started, he decided to pick an application code which might be written in Java or Python or Go, any language it might be written, and he just want to deploy that application code or the microservice into the real world working environment. So what strategy he want to follow, that we will get to know today. The very first thing is that as soon as he started to think about the deployment of this application code, he thought that where this application code need to be deployed. It is not just my personal computer, right? It need to be deployed on the servers. So most of the companies are now using the Linux based servers because automation is possible or automation is very easy on those Linux servers because most of the things which we will perform on the Linux servers are through the command lines. So now to get started, he just had to learn with the navigating the Linux server command lines, how to manage the files, how to understand the permission of all the Linux files. Because without this knowledge, you can't even log into the system where your application code is put, right? So in that case, the very first things he need to learn is the Linux. About the Linux, he need to have the much detailed knowledge about the Linux operating system. So if you want to know the complete roadmap of what all things he need to learn in the Linux, in that case, I have to make a separate video on the complete Linux roadmap for the DevOps engineer. So you can put in the comment section. I will try to make a video on that also. Now, next thing is Git and version control. How it came into picture? So he got the code onto the server, but then there was one bug reported, right? So he fixed it, but accidentally he overwrote a colleague changes. So his colleague made some changes onto the same code that was not saved properly, or then in that case he also wrote some logic onto the same code, and it got a mess. So this code entirely it was a mess, right? So then his team introduced him to Git actually. So now he learned how to commit, how to push and resolve commits conflicts into the using the Git version control system. So now his code is safe, his code is being tracked, he is able to collaborate with his colleagues, he is maintaining the history or he is seeing the history of his code, what all the changes are there onto that particular repository. So all these things he learned onto the Git side, right? Now, why it is important? Because code is constantly changing because of some bug or because of some new enhancement or because of a new microservice. So this code is continuously changing. So Git is a safety net where all the history book and it is a collaboration tool that is preventing the conflict and allow the team to work together as a team. So the next thing he has to learn is about the Git and version control. Now, next thing, what is build to? So there might be the chances that the code is written into the Python or Go or Java, any language, whatever the team is professional about. So they can write the code in that particular language. But the code can't be deployed directly, right? You need some kind of build tool that is going to compile and bundle that application code. So that's where your build tools came into picture. There are multiple types of build tool available in the market, depends on the application language you are having, like if it is a Python, Go, whatever it is. So the application need to be compiled and bundled before deployment, right? It need to be in the form of WAR file or jar file so that it can be easily deployed onto your server. So it is just not copying the file, but instead it is properly compiling, properly building that particular code. So the build tools like npm and maven came into picture. Now he learned about these tools, that is fetching the raw code, it is fetching all the dependencies, and then packaging everything into a runnable artifact so that this artifact can directly be copied onto your Linux server and there your code can work on. This is important because raw code can't be directly deployed onto the runnable production. Instead, the build tools transform these source code into a deployable artifacts, ensuring all the necessary components are built correctly. So, if you want to know about detail in this particular build tool, so in my last lecture, I have already deployed a Java application code using a Maven build tool. You can refer that particular code and you will understand that why this build tool is basically important, because it is compiling the entire application code, it is fetching all the dependencies which is required for that application code, and then building a package out of it. That package can directly be deployed onto your Linux server and can serve the end users, right? Now about the next thing. You already got a packaged application, right? Like in form of war or jar, whatever it is. So now where you need to put those war or jar file, whatever the bundle are there, where you need to put it. You can't put on your personal computer, right? You need to put it somewhere on the cloud where it is properly stored, right? So once these things are built or your application is built, where this application package will go? So in that case, you need to understand the concept of the artifact registries. So now Alex learned how to push his build jar or war files into the artifact repositories, like JFrog is one artifact repositories where you can place your package, and then that is a central storage. Whenever your application is having some bug fixes or some new enhancement, so every time it is upgrading, the new version is getting pushed to your artifact registry, and your server is pulling from that artifact registry and deploying onto your server, right? So now why it is important? Again, the same point, because artifact repositories provide a centralized, versioned, and secure location for all built components and reusability in your deployments, right? So now Alex has to learn about the artifact repository. So till now, what he learned, the very first is the Linux operating system, because nowadays all the companies are deploying their microservices on the Linux based server. So the knowledge of Linux is must for every DevOps engineer to survive in this market. Now, what is this Git and version control? Because your team is working in collaboration and they need to get the latest code before making any change on that particular application code. So Git is a version control system which is providing the team to effectively collaborate with each other. Now, the next thing is, whatever the application you have written, that raw code cannot be deployed directly onto the server. Instead, you have to package that application. So in that case, you have to use the build tools depending on your application language. Now, once the application is packaged, you need to put it or store it on the somewhere on the central servers or central location. And those central locations are being provided by the JFrog Artifactory repository. So there you need to put the packaged application, same as the Git, right? In Git you are putting the application code, but here in the artifact repository you are putting your packaged application with all the dependencies and binary, everything are put in that package, and then you are placing onto the artifact repository. Now the next thing. Now Alex got to know that most of the companies are now moving to the cloud. As you already know that most of the companies are now moving to the cloud so that you don't have to maintain the infrastructure of the cloud. Instead of using the on-prem where you have to manage your infrastructure as well, but there you don't have to maintain. So in that case, most of the companies are now moving to the cloud. So now you have to learn that how to provision the servers or how to provision the database or how to create the networks on any of the cloud providers. So in market, there are multiple cloud providers available like AWS, GCP or Azure. So depending on his team requirement, he had to learn about one of the cloud providers, and he had to know the basic things like how you can provision the servers so that he can deploy his application code onto that server. So now he learned to spin up the virtual machines, configure the security groups for the networking side, and understand the basic services of the cloud providers. Now he need not to maintain or wait for the hardware or infrastructure. He don't have to maintain on that side. Now, why it is important? Because modern infrastructure lives in the cloud. Understanding cloud providers is essential for provisioning, scaling, and managing the environment where your application is running. Now, instead of deploying your applications on your on-prem servers, most of the companies are directly going onto the cloud, and there on that servers they are deploying their applications. So in that case, he need to have the knowledge about the cloud providers. All the clouds can relate with each other. The fundamental things are always common. So any one cloud provider you can pick up and you can start with that. Now, what about the next thing? Docker. How Docker came into picture? Now, as soon as Alex tried to deploy the application on infrastructure which is created on cloud, he got multiple dependencies issue. Alex was like, it worked on my machine. So then he came up with the concept of the Docker. So he created one virtual machine onto the cloud, and there he tried to deploy the same code onto that particular cloud server, right? But while deployment, he got multiple dependencies issue related to your application, because the version which might support on your computer for some binaries might be different for the cloud servers. So in that case, he was like, it was working fine on my machine. This application was working fine on my machine, but it is not working over here. That time he hit the concept of the Docker. So now he need to learn about how to package that application and its dependencies into a neat portable Docker image. So whatever the dependencies which was there for his application code, everything was written onto a Docker file, and that Docker file was built into an image, and that image can be is portable basically, and directly you can use that particular image anywhere on any servers, and you will not get any dependencies issue. So now now Docker provide environment consistency from development to production, solving the dependencies issue and simplifying the deployment. So you got the concept why Docker came into picture. So now with the help of Docker, there is no issue such as that it was working fine on my machine, it is not working on that machine. These kind of conflicts are not there. So if it is working on your machine, the same thing will work on that particular machine also, because all the dependencies, everything we have packaged into a single Docker image, and that Docker image is portable onto the multiple servers. You can directly use it depending on the type of server which you are using. Okay. Now, Alex had a call with his friend who is DevOps engineer in some company. He told that for now you just have your one application code in your project. What if there are multiple microservices, multiple application codes? Then in that case, building those application code and deploying those application code, that's a manual process and is very tedious, right? So instead, why don't you create a single pipeline that will do the same job for you? So in that case, he came up with the tools like Jenkins pipeline. Then nowadays modern GitOps comes into picture. So now also in many companies they are using Jenkins itself, but then many companies are now moving to the GitOps model. Whatever the pipelines they had, they are upgrading those pipelines onto the GitOps model. In GitOps, you have two things. One is GitHub Actions, other one is Argo CD. GitHub is for the continuous integration, and Argo CD is for the continuous deployment. So what this GitHub action will do? It will build your code. It will run test cases on that particular code. It will create the Docker image of those application code, and then it will push those Docker image onto the private or public container registry, depending on your team, whatever they are using. Now, when Argo CD comes into picture, Argo CD is for the continuous deployment. Whenever the Argo CD sees that there is some change in the Docker image tag, the latest image is now being built. So it will pick that latest image and deploy onto your Kubernetes cluster. Without any intervention, it will just pick up that latest code with the latest stack and it will deploy onto your environment. You don't have to do it manually. Once it is configured by the Argo CD, everything will be done on the go. You don't have to worry about that part. And even if you create a single pipeline for any one of the application code, you can just refer to that and build multiple pipelines out of it. So it is very easy, right? And even some new team member is joining your team, it is very easy for them. If they want to deploy a new application image onto your Kubernetes cluster, they can just simply run that pipeline and everything will be done on the go. You don't have to maintain it manually, right? Now, why Kubernetes came into picture? Now, Alex thought that what if I have multiple services for my application? So managing them through the Docker container would be very difficult to manage. Now, there were very few application codes or few application services which he was managing on the Docker containers. What if there are multiple microservices deployed onto your environment and they want to connect or they want to coordinate with each other? So through the Docker, it is very difficult to manage those many services. So Kubernetes came into picture. That is managing the orchestration, scaling, and self-healing of these application codes. So now as a DevOps engineer, you need to manage and optimize the Kubernetes cluster, which is a high demand skill for ensuring application resilience and scalability, right? So that's why now Kubernetes come into picture, and nowadays most of the companies are deploying their application onto the Kubernetes cluster. So this knowledge is must. And if you want to know in much detail about the Kubernetes, you can see my Kubernetes playlist where I'm trying to explain each and everything in much detail, and slowly I'm going over there. Okay. Now, why Terraform came into picture? There are multiple tools, right? But every tool is having its own importance, and once you learn one by one, right, you can easily correlate them together. Since Alex is creating the infrastructures on the cloud provider, right? So maybe for testing, he need to create, destroy those services again and again. So instead of creating or destroying those services each time on the cloud provider, doing it manually, right? So you can write a Terraform file which will do the same stuff, and it is just a one-time task. And then later you can just reuse it every time you want to create or destroy any infrastructure on the cloud provider. So that's why Terraform came into picture. Now, in order to use services on the cloud for free, Alex was deleting the infrastructure every time after every test. But then he thought, what if I automate the creation and destruction of the infrastructure to save my time? So that time, the tool called as Terraform came into picture. Manual infrastructure provisioning is the slow and error prone. So that's why Terraform allows you to define your entire infrastructure from network to Kubernetes cluster as a code, bringing version control automation to your cloud resources. Okay. Now the next thing is Ansible. Now, Alex came across one scenario where he had to install Python 3.2 version on multiple servers. So instead of doing it manually on those many multiple servers, let's say it is 100 server, so you are not going to install Python 3.2 version on each of the Linux server manually. Instead, you can use the Ansible as a configuration management tool, and there you can provide all the versions which you want to install for your binaries onto those many servers. That's why Ansible came into picture. Now, what about the monitoring and alerting? The next day, Alice found that his application is not responding, and then he came up with the thought that I should get be notified when our application was down, right? So whenever his application is down, he need to be get notified over the Slack or email, whatever it is, or pager duty. You want to get notified before the users start facing that issue and they come up with the ping that your application is not working. He should get the alerts. So then he came with the tools like Prometheus, Grafana, Alert Manager, those things came into picture. So you can't fix what you don't know is broken, right? Now monitoring provides a critical visibility into the system health and performance, how your application is behaving, what are the CPU and RAM uses for your application. So all those things can be monitored using these particular tools. Now, as 2026 approaches, the DevOps landscape will have the significant evolution. Again, you need to have a knowledge about the automation side because everything can't be automated through these DevOps tools. Sometimes you need the scripting language also, like you need to know about the Python, or you need to know about the shell, or you need to know about the Golang, right? So any one language you can pick and just write a basic kind of codes so that you can understand how the application code works, or if you want to do some kind of automation onto your project, those things you can easily do it. So you need to have knowledge about that part. Now, most of the companies are now using the GitOps model that I already told you that you need to learn about the GitHub Actions, Argo CD. These things are uh, very much being used in most of the companies now. Now, also you need to take care of the security part. So now we have the DevSecOps. You can learn about it, right? It is not like you need to learn now only, but I'm just telling you because now slowly these things will be much used in most of the companies. And if you see the in job description, these things will also be there slowly, but not now urgently, right? Now you need to have the knowledge about some cost optimization tools like OpenCost, KubeCost, because since everything we are creating on the cloud servers, we don't want to pay more to that cloud provider, right? We want to do the cost optimization as much as we can. So in that case, you need to have knowledge about some tools like OpenCost and KubeCost. Then you already know that now AI is also coming into picture. So getting used to with the AI ops or ML ops will also gonna help you in the future DevOps landscape. Okay. Now, if you want to know in detail about any DevOps tool in much detail, so let me know in the comment section. I can share you the roadmap for that particular tools also. Like if you want to know about much how you can learn about the Linux, then I can provide you the roadmap or what all topics you need to cover on the Kubernetes side. How can you get started with that? So I can make a roadmap guide for that as well. So till now, keep subscribing to the YouTube channel DevOps Tech Stack. Thank you.